Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I want to start with reminding everybody that if anybody that doesn't look like there's anybody that doesn't know this, fill out a blue card if you have any public comment and give it to Tanya. Adjustments to the agenda 1.2. Not really. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Okay. So we'll move to action items 2.1, election of the budget committee presiding officer. Are there any nominations? Hearing none, the meeting's over.
Is it approved?
Oh, yeah. Moving forward.
Is this where we go nodding?
I'll nominate Mr. Higgins. He did a great job last year.
Oh, is there a second?
Nice.
Ooh, having a second. Is there any discussion? Would you like to say anything, sir?
No comment.
Tanya, can you get a roll call vote?
Member Macy?
Who'd you say?
Yes or no? We're voting.
Member Brownell?
Yes.
Member Bassett?
Yes.
Member Long?
Yes.
Member Wilkins?
Yes.
Member Higgins?
Abstain.
Member Collins?
Yes.
Member Ingram?
Yes.
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Right. Passing out the gavel, sir.
Sing at the gavel. Thank you. Well, I guess you guys are gluttons for punishment doing this 2 years in a row, but I'll give it a go. So now that we've elected the presiding officer, we now need to adopt the rules to establish operating procedures for this meeting. It's generally been the rule in the past that we adopt Robert Rules of Order, and I would entertain a motion in that regard. We have been moved. A second?
Second.
All those in favor, just indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that passes unanimously. So we have adopted Robert's Rules of Order for operation of this meeting. So the opening communication item is a delivery of the budget message by Superintendent Sweeney.
Superintendent budget message for the 23-24 fiscal year overview. I'd like to welcome the Budget Committee, staff members, and members of the public attending today's Budget Committee meeting. This is the first official Budget Committee meeting to review the proposed 2023-2024 Grants Pass School District Number 7 budget. To say these are interesting times would be an understatement. While we have been encouraged to see Oregon's economy bouncing back from the COVID-19 mandates that significantly impacted our educational institutions, there are still lingering hurdles that we have to get through. Final budget numbers will not be determined until the final legislative forecast expected in June of 2023, or maybe later, depending on who shows up in Salem. The proposed budget being presented to you this evening is based on the first half of the biennial budget of $10.2 billion for education. This funding makes up the district's general fund and has a 49%, 51% split over the course of the 23-25 biennium. Overall, we are seeing a slight increase in fund revenue over the last year, but not enough to keep school districts whole. Grants Pass, along with the rest of the state, has seen a decrease in enrollment over the past few years. And while we have worked hard to increase our enrollment, we are still shy of 600 students, which directly impacts the district's revenue and ability to sustain learning for our students. We are able to present a balanced budget by utilizing one-time ESSER funds to offset resource revenue in the general fund. The Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Act was intended to support school districts due to the impact of COVID-19, including loss of enrollment. The 2023-24 proposed budget will be allocating the remaining 7.855 million of these federal dollars, which includes 1.3 million of learning loss. The district continues to face increasing costs as a result of collective bargaining obligations, essential staffing costs, as well as increasing costs for utilities, insurance, PERS rate increases, and other recurring expenditures. We are currently bargaining with both the classified and certified bargaining groups and have other capital projects and bus replacement requirements that we have to manage. While costs continue to rise, we are seeing a reduction in federal programs such as Title I, 2A, 4, and 10. Some of this is offset by funding from the state in the High School Success Grant and the Student Investment Account. Overall, we are presenting a 2023-24 school year balanced budget, but we need to look ahead and acknowledge some upcoming challenges like the ESSER funding cliff, decreased ADM, as well as increased need for special education-related support services and other district-wide requirements. While other neighboring districts are downsizing and cutting positions, we are working diligently and creatively to maintain the best teacher and staff, provide the best education to our Grants Pass students, and not only maintain but improve our facilities and programs. Income. In 2022-23, the Grants Pass School District Number 7 general fund dollars were $89,555,318. I am anticipating that in the 2023-24 school year, Grants Pass School District 7 general fund dollars will be at $86,013,296, which is a decrease of $3,452,377, or 4%. The decrease is due to a reduction of ESSER dollars as well as a reduction of enrollment grant money accounts for an additional income of $17,245,185. Our district's total revenue is expected to come in at $103,258,481. ESSER grants. We still have some funds from our ESSER 3 grant in the 2022-23 school year. $3.7 million was budgeted for salaries and associated payroll costs. In the 2023-24 school year, we have reduced the dependence on ESSER to cover our payroll costs by $1.5 million, or 41%, to $1.5 million. I don't think that adds up.
Should not be in there.
Okay. The balance of these funds are mostly penciled to be used as one-time expenditures like buses and supplies, with the balance going towards the ending fund balance. Overall, in comparison to the 2022-23 school year, there are some increases as well as decreases to the general fund revenue for the 2023-24 budget. General fund revenue resources increases, beginning fund balance increase of $2,049,442. State school fund, looks like that's an increase of $5,186,519. Other revenue looks like a decrease of $10,688,338. No transfers in, for a total decrease of $3,452,377. Enrollment. During the pandemic, approximately 800 students left District 7 between March of 2020 and June of 2022. During the 2022-23 school year, we saw our enrollment rebound a bit, with more than 200 students returning to the district. We continue to see hopeful signs that our enrollment will continue to grow. We are excited for the opportunities that GP Flex will provide families, and we will be marketing the new campus throughout the summer with an advertising campaign, which you'll get to see tonight. We also will have a new housing development opening across the street from South Middle School sometime during the upcoming school year that we anticipate will provide another 80 to 100 students. There's also some excitement with a new neighborhood going in across the street from Redwood Elementary that will have 60 new single-family homes in it. There is some concern with a new private elementary school coming into Grants Pass, and we do not yet know the impact that will have on our elementary enrollment, but overall, the signs of growth are very positive. I anticipate carryover. I anticipate having a solid carryover of $4,587,234 with a $600,000 contingency. Expenditures. Staffing. We anticipate that staffing will remain at our at or slightly above the current level for the 2023-24 school year. GP Flex, we will use ESSER dollars as well as dollars from the approved debt restructuring to add 4 modular buildings across from Grants Pass High School. These new modular buildings will provide an opportunity for students and their families looking for an alternative to the traditional school environment, and we have an attainable goal of increasing enrollment to 160 students. Debt restructuring. The board approved a debt restructuring to secure up to $13 million for capital projects and upgrades over the next 3 years, with a goal of passing a local bond for $20 to $25 million for additional district capital needs in the near future. The 2023-24 budget includes $4,450,000 worth of expenditures for projects identified as high priority. Negotiations. We are currently negotiating with both unions on new contracts. We expect to settle with the classified union before the end of the fiscal year, but the certified union may take a little longer. Board objectives. The board has a series of objectives they wanted us to meet for this budget. 1, create a sync fund. This budget has a $200,000 sync fund set aside. We will grow that fund over the coming years. 2, give staff adequate raises. This budget includes raises for classified, certified, confidential, and administrators. These raises will keep us very competitive with other local districts. 3, move salaries out of ESSER funds. This budget reduces our use of ESSER funds for salaries from $3.7 million to $1.5 million. We have every expectation that we will easily be able to bring all employee salaries back into the general fund by the summer of 2024. 4, increase CTE opportunities. This budget includes the new automotive program and an engineering robotics program at Grants Pass High. 5, upgrade facilities. This budget includes funds from our debt restructuring that will allow us to do more than $12 million in upgrades to our schools. And 6, stabilize the district's finances. This budget takes us closer to a more stable financial future and allows us to continue to have low class sizes and support our students. If we continue to be conservative in our approach and watch how we spend our money, we should be able to be stable into the future. This budget has a projected ending fund balance of 6.37%. Difference. Overall, in comparison with the 2022-23 school year, there are some increases as well as decreases of the general fund expenditures for the 2023-24 budget. Net staff salary associated payroll increases $4,991,239. All other expenditure categories $2,006,203. Contingencies and transfers, $8,865,378 in the whole. Ending fund balance increase, $1,584,444. Total, $3,452,377. Director Sparks will provide more details about the various revenue expenditure variances during the formal budget presentations. Summary. In writing my first budget message as your superintendent, I want to express how honored I am to be a part of the incredible district and supportive community that places high value on providing opportunities for every child to learn. Balance. Through a lot of thoughtful planning and excellent work from the business director, business office staff, and directors, I'm pleased to state that the budget before you is balanced. In closing, I'd like to thank the staff for their efforts in preparing the proposed 23-24 budget. In addition, I would like to thank the board and budget committee members for their ongoing commitment to our students, our staff, and the programs that make our district successful. Respectfully submitted, Tim Sweeney, Superintendent, Grants Pass School District Number 7.
Thank you, Superintendent Sweeney. The next item on the agenda, we have to explain the method for submission of community comments during this meeting. So we're holding up the blue card. If I remember right there, you can fill in your name and address. And do we have a limit on the speaking time on here or no? 3 minutes. So if anyone in the audience would like to fill out one of these cards, Danny, Ryan, Trish.
Did I put one in?
I guess you guys can speak without a card, but anyone who's not a member of the staff needs to fill out one of these and hand it up to the podium here, and we'll give you a allotted amount of time to speak. Thank you. Okay. So, reports. We're going to have Natalie, the business director, give the explanation review of the proposed budget document.
Right. Welcome, everybody. I'm really happy that we're at this point because it's taken a lot to get here. And so I appreciate all of you guys, and all of the help and guidance.
Gotta watch the rest.
Yeah, you got it, you got it. So let's see. Make sure this thing is working. Yes. So I'll just kind of go over real quick what the agenda is, the areas that we're going to cover here. Let me take this off because it's going to clink and clang. We already finished the superintendent's budget message. We're going to go over the budget committee role and process really quickly. We're going to go over what the goal is for tonight, some of the things that are new this budget cycle that are different from before. And then we're going to do the fun part, the school and site budget presentations, or not, sorry, not budget, highlight presentations. And any of you that want to leave after that, you are welcome to, after you have a slice of pizza. And let's see, we're going to go over the district statistics, a couple of budget basics, just a quick review. We're going to go over general fund and non-general fund revenues and expenditures, and talk about just the different resources and requirements, which also are the same thing as revenue and expenditures. We're also going to take a few minutes to talk about ESSER, SIA, and high school success, or Measure 98. And we're going to talk through a couple of issues that are facing the district and some solutions, and then we should be done. So real quick, before we move forward, I wanted to just address some of the things that are on your table. The budget, the proposed budget book is all of the state requirements that have to be in a budget book, which you guys have all seen, any of you that have been on the budget committee before. A lot of numbers in the very beginning. It's divided up into sections, so the superintendent's budget message is in there, sorry, I'm forgetting all the different parts and pieces, all the reference material and the publications and things like that. What is new today is the budget highlights booklet, and that one has a lot more. There's all of the site and program highlights. So there's a lot of detail in there. The team took a lot of time to put their goals in there, their highlights, their successes, some of the issues that they're facing. So some of that was in response to, I think the budget committee had talked about doing a tour of all of the different schools. So shy of doing that, this is a really heartfelt presentation from everyone on the bits and pieces that you might have gotten from an actual tour. There's also all of the different pieces that are in the budget book are presented in graphs and more words. So it's another way to kind of share the same information within the budget book, but with a lot more color and a different way to learn, I think. So throughout and then the other thing that you guys have on your tables is the slides that we're going to go through today. So you can follow along by using the slides if that helps, and go from there. So the role of the budget committee, we did go over that last time that we met, so I didn't want to take a whole lot of time on it. I just wanted to make sure that we touched on it for a second. And the goal for today, after we review all of the budgeted revenue projections and all of the budgeted expense projections, I do want to confirm that the priorities that were brought to our attention by the budget committee have been addressed, as Tim mentioned in the budget message. And ultimately, the goal tonight is to approve the budget. And if there's any changes or anything else, then we can make those adjustments. But that's the goal. One thing to note is throughout the budget presentation, on the right-hand side, you'll see page numbers. Those page numbers directly reflect so the budget book itself has page numbers in it. So the presentation will directly tie to the budget book. So you'll be able to see the same numbers. So that kind of helps provide a little bit more clarity around things. So with that, we're actually going to go to the fun stuff. And our site presentations, I think elementary's first. They're gonna cue you up right there.
Good evening. So as we kind of highlight what's going on in the elementary world, we felt it important to just remember that we are first and foremost an academic institution, and the road to graduation starts in kindergarten. So we wanted to share with you our data from this year of our kindergarten kiddos that came in, and I pulled a Danny and left my glasses somewhere else, so I apologize. But at the beginning of the year, we have 42% of our students that came in kindergarten that, thanks, that were at or above benchmark. And if you look at the end of the year, that number is at 77%, which is getting awfully close to an elusive 80% mark that we don't get to very often. But in the RTI model, that is that 80% is where we measure the strength of our core. And so if you look at our strugglers that came in, 133 students came in with intensive needs. That means very, very low skills, very few letter sounds, letters, even just recognizing letters. By the end of this year, our kindergarten teachers and 6 principals who are very proud of our kindergarten team, that number is 39 students. So, I mean, this is just one piece that we're excited to share. These kids are, if I just did my math right, they're the graduating class of 2035, maybe, and this is off to a good start. This is very promising, and the seeds we plant that we water and watch our kids grow until they come and visit us last week at Parade of Graduates. So we're really excited to share this with you, and Kelly's going to share some of the other fun things we get to do with our students. Click. Thanks for the last one.
Okay, so one of the ways that the budget, I'm Kelly Smith, I'm the principal at Lincoln Elementary. One of the ways that the budget really helps to support our students is giving them opportunities to connect and feel a part of the community. And so lots and lots of field trips and extracurricular activities and clubs are happening in all of the elementary schools. So again, another opportunity for some kids, right? They need a little extra to get them into being connected and seeing the purpose for that long-term goal of graduation. So field trips, wildlife safari, our 5th graders all go on overnight trips. So OMSI, outdoor school, whatever it is, they're getting that opportunity to take their learning far outside the classroom. Chess club, junior coaching. We had Jill Go from Parkside, we're going to be north. Did a lot of work with coordinating Playworks coming to help support our schools in recess. And so giving a more structured team aspect to recess. And so we have junior coaches, peer mentoring opportunities for kids to support other students in a variety of ways. Art clubs, smile clubs, book clubs, archery, chess, that's been a really big one. Honor choirs, racket clubs. I know trips to Mount Ashland, music programs, outdoor school, jet boats, right? Our 5th graders were all just on jet boats this week or into last week. So these are all the really rich opportunities that our students are able to get outside of the classroom. Opportunities for celebrating students who are doing the right thing by celebrating Students of the Month and getting to have lunch with the building principals, our family involvement nights. throughout the year are huge. And again, lots of field trips, lots of kids who are just hiking Table Rock, all those great opportunities for them to take their learning outside the walls of the school.
Next we have,
Thank you for the opportunity tonight. Tommy Blanchard over at North Middle School and Robert Lingo coming over from South. As we originally put the information together that you have in the booklets, we could provide what we had at that point in time. One of the things that I want to highlight, though, that was not in there is that we are currently getting our state test results coming in. And I know that a lot of this is about facilities, but as Nevin and Kelly pointed out, it's about the kids and what's going on inside those buildings. What I wanted to highlight for North was that we've always seen a progression of the number of students passing the state test and being proficient in reading. And we've always attributed that to a 3-year effort at North Middle School. And we also attribute that to all of our content areas being teachers of reading and writing. And so our kids come in and continue to progress and learn. And we've kind of capped that off this year with 70% of our 8th grade students passing the state test in reading, which is a significant increase over what the state average is. And so we're really proud of that, despite all the challenges that we've been faced with in the last couple of years with COVID and other things. So we're super excited to be able to highlight that. We are seeing the number of kids with who are decreasing the number of years behind in reading. So to think that we're going to get kids at grade level in a year is not possible, but is growth. And the decrease in the number of years behind, something that we can do, and we are finding that. We are also super excited to see that more and more of our parents are starting to be involved in things when we're finding quite the opposite in many areas. So today we had a PTSA meeting after school, and we had 3 different elementary schools show up to already start thinking about next year. So we're really excited about that. I'm going to let Robert share a few successes, and then we'll highlight a couple of our little challenges there.
All right, thank you. Again, I'm Robert Lingo from South Middle School. This year, we've really tried to change our focus. One of the main focuses for us as a staff has been kind of a return towards student achievement and outcomes. We know that COVID really hit us hard, and so last year was a lot about just helping students feel welcome and okay being back in our buildings. And so this year it's been a return to a focus on student achievement. And one of the areas that I tend to focus on a lot as a former math teacher is what our math teachers are doing. And we have been involved with a program called iReady the last 2 years. And this year our number of students that were 2 or 3 years or more behind in mathematics significantly decreased through the course of the year. So we're excited about that, hoping that if we can continue that effort next year, hopefully we have most of our students at or near grade level, at the end of each school year. On our state assessment, in particular, our 7th grade class, it looks like preliminarily they're going to come in about 16 points ahead of the state average. So I think we have some teachers doing really good work in the classroom as we return our focus towards the outcomes and achievements of our students. And I also want to highlight some of the fun activities that we get to be involved with. About 3 hours ago, I was a sweaty mess cleaning up from the YMCA trip that we took all of our 8th graders on. And I got my shirt and tie, drove over here for the budget presentation. And a lot of those activities are, thanks to you all for being here to put together a budget that not only focuses on reading and writing, but also on the fun stuff that kids can do. And so we've been having a chance the last few days to take different groups to the YMCA and celebrate the end of the state testing season as a way to tell them we value their effort. in doing well on those state assessments. So thank you, transportation and food services and all that goes into making those activities get pulled off at the end of the day.
Just quickly, a few of the challenges that I think we'll be facing for a while, but I appreciate hearing that we're not looking at losing staff because class sizes are important when kids are struggling and still behind in school. Post-pandemic, kids are still struggling social emotionally. We need to support staff in place to be able to support our students. We cannot function without those individuals to be able to support our kids and our staff throughout the day. We still have aging buildings, and that takes money to be able to fix those things. Chronically absent students, we need support staff in place to be able to go after those families, and I mean that in a positive way. Go after and identify what it is that is a barrier so we can get our kids back in school. If they're not in school, they're going to struggle to learn and struggle to thrive in the community. So those are a couple of our biggest challenges. And so I'm hoping for the support, and I appreciate the importance of continuing to maintain our staff even in some challenging times. Thank you.
Thompson here from Grants Pass High. There's a few slides. It looks like I skipped alternative learning. Are you guys okay if I skip them? Okay. Gotcha.
In your books, if you go on the highlights books, it's on page 22.
So we'll start off with Grants Pass High School in general, and then we'll do a page on athletics and a page on the Performing Arts Center. To start off with, successes this year really focused on getting back to high expectations in the classroom and overall. So we're really focused on students to school on time. I shared earlier with many of the same people in this room that first semester had over 1,000 fewer tardies just during first period alone. First semester, as we just really focused on accountability. Also, on-time teacher taking attendance. Teachers are busy teaching and sometimes forget that task. We increased that 8% this year to nearly 96%. Also, a big focus on instructional practices with instructional coaches. We have 2 part-time instructional coaches that teach, and then they are out in the classroom. Some of you saw a presentation by them earlier this year. They had a lot of classroom contacts. As of 2 months ago, they'd had 220 coaching contacts and over 60 plus teachers that initiated contact with them to help improve the practice in the classroom on those best instructional practices. A lot of work and focus too was made this year on elimination of our essentials, formerly known as basic classes. We have a lot of lower level learners in those classes, and really good intentions in those classrooms. Like, we have a lot of mama bears and papa bears that want to teach those kids and take care of them. But what we've realized over time is that it's an antiquated model, and those students need better models in the classroom, not just great teachers, but also better learning models in the classroom. So a lot of work was done, hours and hours, a lot of consultation with other outside schools and other experts and our staff just in general in talking about a better model. Ms. Napier, our next year Grants Pass High principal, has put together a team of champions that is addressing how to instruct in his best way possible all levels of learners within the classroom, because it really can be challenging, even for a kindergarten classroom that has this scope of learners. All of a sudden you get to 12th grade and it's that wide. So we'll have, of course, our AP and advanced courses. Those will still exist, but in that regular classroom, some more strategies that will be rolled out for this next year. We also, as you probably were aware, moving to a later start time. We took a long, strong, hard look at that too. A student voice that initiated that. I had looked at it through the years, but all of a sudden did some math and realized this is very possible. Our kids who ride the bus will have exactly 1 hour more of sleep. So they were dropped off around 7 a.m. every day and waited for 52 minutes for the school to start, which was a real waste of time. You need about most of our high school kids need about 15 minutes to eat breakfast. And next year, they'll be dropped off 1 hour later. So it'll be 8 to 8:05, and they'll have an hour. 676 kids, I think, who ride the bus will have 1 more hour more of sleep. And I don't need to tell you, if you've seen the research, what sleep does for the teenage brain. Super proud of our staff efforts there in addressing that. And kudos to transportation for helping just work with us and the other school levels too. I know it affected the alt ed schedule as well, and they've all been great to work with. Lastly, some challenges. Mrs. Napier has prioritized a new position next year called, it's not an additional position, but a replacement of a different teaching position for a tier 3 or red zone students. We have a lot of great programs for our kids that are kind of on the cusp, but there are some severely impacted kids that will absolutely be with Mike. We know it, but we want to try and keep as many of those kids here that we can, and or help those kids kind of find themselves and own their stuff, so to speak, which is what they do such a good job of at Gladiola. We want to try and retain more of those kids here before they are so credit deficient and coming to Mike and trying to graduate in a short amount of time with a lot of credits. So there's a new teaching focus on that this upcoming year. Continue to focus on our climate and culture. That work is never done. We know the importance of it, and kids feel it. And so we always want to work on our climate and culture, oftentimes referred to as We Are GP. And then some goals, focusing always on our 9th grade on track improvement, focusing on our 4-year grad rate, and our regular attending students. All right, I'll move to athletics. We have, as you may see on that page, if you're open to it, 81 different coaches overseeing 30 different athletic programs. Super fortunate that our kids have so many opportunities here, not to mention what we have available with clubs, and then later we'll talk about music in a minute. Of those programs, they are fielding 46 varsity and sub-varsity teams, over 700 students that participated this past year in OSAA athletics. And most athletic teams had a combined GPA over 3.0. The first challenge talks about improving existing athletic facilities, and I know Athletic Director Roundsville will be the first to tell you that may be a challenge, but he's the first to we have some of the nicest facilities in the state, honestly. It's a challenge to keep them up. It's a challenge to keep updating them. If you're at graduation, you may have heard some sound system issues, as an example. But nevertheless, we have tremendous facilities. We're very proud of those. We're thankful for the community that has helped out, booster clubs, donors, and our district, obviously, too. So feel very supported there. Retaining qualified coaches is a huge challenge everywhere across the country. We're having more and more teachers that are like, you know what, I'm teaching 55, 60 hours a week. I don't want to coach another 25 hours a week. It's a lot of time and effort to make, it's got to be in here. And we have a lot of people that have it in here, but it's a big ask. And so if you look at our composite of number of coaches that we have that are non-teachers, we have, I'm not going to give you exact percentage, but far more non-teachers than we do teachers coaching. We thank those people because some of them are in a place in life where they can give back and not worry so much about the income. So anyway, we appreciate all of our coaches, but a big challenge there is training them, because every teacher here has to take about 18 different trainings before they step into the classroom on day one every year online. Those coaches are in charge of the safety and health and well-being of our students, and they don't have the formalized teaching education that all of our teachers do. So that is something that is ongoing. On top of that, OSAA has a number of required trainings too. Athletic Director Roundsville next year will be starting some leadership training within our athletic teams to try and develop leadership skills and within all the teams. Excited for that. And as always, we want to focus on fan behavior. Overall, I think it's been pretty strong, but in our society, you don't need to go far on YouTube to find some pretty deficient fan behavior. So that's a focus with our students. It's a focus with all of our fans. All right, we will move on to Performing Arts Center. Lots to celebrate there. Over 260 days a year, that performing arts facility is utilized. Over 80 annual community performances. Real quickly, the 4 programs out there. Our theater department was named an honor troupe once again, the last 2 years. Choir had qualified and attended our OSAA state competition. Marching band for the 4th year in a row were NWAPA champions of the Pacific Northwest. Also, our percussion finished first in state this spring. And then orchestra had 3 soloists and 2 chamber ensembles that went to the state championships, and then they finished 3rd overall, the chamber did for the state of Oregon, their highest achievement in over 20 years. Some challenges is equitable use of the facility. That is a very a facility very much in demand, and it's just a lot of work to balance the needs of the community and the needs of all of our school programs. Making sure that storage is such a boring thing to talk about, but there's a lot of storage needs there. And as you have 230 kids in band, they all have instruments, and you have 107 kids in orchestra, and they all have instruments and theater, et cetera. So far been able to balance that, but that's becoming an increased challenge. Big goal for next year is working with that amazing 4-Way Foundation that has ponied up some money to help improve the facility. We're really appreciative of that, and already some new carpet that's in there looks fantastic, and we'll just continue to work with them as we juggle the needs of the Performing Arts Center. All right, thank you.
So I'm Keith Jarrus, I'm the principal of GP Flex. One of the things that Tim had talked about was enrollment and increasing enrollment in the district. And that's really what we're focused on with GP Flex, bringing kids in, bringing kids back, making connections. Our enrollment at GP Flex doubled over from August until this June. And we were also a bridge program, which was something that was surprising to me going in. There were a lot of kids that we would connect with, and then they would be in GP Flex until we could get them to Gladiola, or we could get them back to North, or get them to the high school, or get them into the GED program or something along those lines. And so this is just a little something we put together for this meeting.
Just this morning, right?
Yes. They can do online, lots and lots of different options. One of the other successes that we had this year is we matched that 94% graduation rate this year with our graduating class. And the big challenge that we're going to have is as we're moving into the new into our new facility, hopefully by October 1st, or sometime thereabouts, is just the challenges of getting everything moved over and all the facilities and logistics that go with that. But we're very excited about it and very thankful to the board for for approving that, and thankful to the district for supporting that, and just for the vision that you guys have had for us. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Dr. Shunk. I'm the principal at Gladiola High School. Page 25, thank you. Stop when you see tie-dye. Okay. So Gladiola High School is our district, kind of under our umbrella, alternative education. We've had a lot of big changes over the last couple of years. We've added a social emotional based onboarding program to a lot of success. Did a lot more accountability with attendance. Got the whole staff trained on this onboarding program, and it's had some pretty positive results. Traditionally, previous years, Gladiola would have between 19 and 25 graduates. Last year we had 54. This year we had 67. Last week we graduated 67 kids and had 40 GED completers. And for a campus that usually only has a little over 100 people on it, to graduate 107 kids and complete them was pretty neat. Looking at our kind of like schools in the area, our four-year completer rate is at the top. We're 10% higher than the second place in our region. And our fifth-year completer rates are bread and butter. We should get the results of that after this year, and we're looking forward to that. So we've got a lot of support from the district office and from the school board with Alt-Ed having smaller class sizes, 15-to-1 ratios, and one therapist for 100 students versus one for 15 to 1,600. Takes extra resources, but it's resulting in a lot of benefits. We've also, with all those successes, we've reduced suspensions, we've reduced expulsions. We don't have fights on campus. We get to address any kind of student issues or drama or tension really quickly. And as a result, our youth truth results are some of the highest in the state. Those are student and family reported kind of quantitative and qualitative feedback for us. Students feeling safe, students feeling they connect with teachers, students feeling like they can be who they are. There were multiple metrics where Gladiola was the highest in the state, which is pretty neat. So there's a lot of positives moving forward. We've also been working on our relationships with our community partners. We've referred at least 30 students to options for ongoing mental health support. Project Youth Plus, we've grown that. A lot of our graduates are moving on to family-sustaining careers and wages, which is great. So not just graduating a bunch of kids, but working on connecting them with next steps so they can be independent and have a wonderful, healthy life. Working with WorkSource, 715 VOTEC to get some hands-on skills for our kids. A lot of them, it's their first experience with welding or electrical work. A lot of them end up following welding programs when they graduate too. So it's that exposure and that hands-on experience, and it kind of lights a fire and gives them a reason to show up every day. Some of our challenges with that, attendance challenges have been tough. We've really decreased our chronic absenteeism rate. But some additional support in the realm of truancy. I don't like to do things with a stick, but if there's a stick, sometimes the carrot looks a lot more attractive. So we're working on that. Also, one thing we're hoping for, the mental health support. This year, the district prioritized adding option skills trainers to the schools. That has been a huge help, having a trained option skills trainer in our expulsion programs at GPAS and Bridges PM to work with students, stabilize them, get them mental health support, work on the skills. Because a lot of those students are not just academically deficient, they're academically deficient because they're disengaged due to behaviors. And so getting them schooled up on some behaviors will enable them to focus more on school. We're excited for the GP Flex campus. It's been great having them and having the camaraderie and the collegiality. One thing with the split is there's one option skills trainer, and I think it's a great choice, going to move to the GPAS Middle School. One thing we'd like to add, if possible, if it's in the budget, would be an additional option skills trainer for our GPAS High School program. We've seen a lot of success this year, and we'd like to carry that forward. Other than that, we're going to keep moving and expanding and taking care of kids as much as we can. So thanks for the support.
All right, I'm going to do a couple of them that fall under operations. First one, food service. Want to highlight that by the time the year ends, will be about 800,000 meals, breakfast, lunch, and snacks that have been served to students. The increase in the number of elementaries doing the fresh fruits and vegetables program, starting to introduce the new supper program. Been a real slow rollout, but hoping to increase that as we head into next year. Super big goal for food service will be to decrease the sugar, increase the protein, get more kids utilizing the free options. When we've got free meals for breakfast and lunch, to not have, there you go, more kids utilizing that is problematic. So how do we do that? We're in the process of increasing both quality and quantity that we are able to put out there for kids. So the orchestration of 10, 11, soon to be maybe 12 different places on on district property is quite the undertaking. Just recently, I think actually today, Jill Gove sent over the numbers for elementary, and it looks like about between 500 and 600 kids are going to be needing meals in the elementary summer program. So it's pretty neat when we can head into the summer, still provide academic opportunities on top of being able to provide food. Some of the biggest challenges would just be supply chain issues, and then being part of a consortium that limits our ability to purchase where we would like, and that offers variety. So we're in the process of working on that right now. Transportation, just think about the orchestration of that. Nearly 70 employees, close to 30 buses, about 2,800 students. I think that's pretty small up there right now, but approximately 3,500 miles driven with our buses every single day. So think about a call center, multiply it by about 100, and that's what transportation is like every day, dealing with phone calls coming from the schools, from buses, from parents trying to get their immediate question answered when we're trying to worry about 2,800 students and they're worried about their student. Really working on being on top of all the requirements that are coming down from state, phasing out the old vehicles and getting new ones in. Our people do a really great job of maintaining the vehicles we have. There's some pretty old ones on the fleet right now, and yet they're still able to function and get our kids around. So we're super excited about that. Mentioned the food service program when we're talking about food a little bit up there, but our transportation department plays a big part in that, in making sure that our kids who need rides are getting rides, and that meals are getting to the locations that are needed. Got smaller vehicles that will allow us to take certain programs or teams to locations. Think about golf that doesn't need an entire big old bus to be able to get them there. So we do have vehicles and continuing to work on that to provide better options for our students. One of the main challenges is just constantly having enough people in place to fill the routes, and the number of students that receive special education services is increasing all the time. Every new kid we get changes the routes that are necessary, so it's not just adding one kid, but it's changing an entire route and sometimes multiple routes to be able to do that. And we've got a really responsive group over there, so super appreciative for all that they're doing to support our kids in our schools. Maintenance, boy, everywhere you go, you see, seems like some of our guys, Don and Eric, it seems like there's about 10 of them, but it's just the two of them that seem to be out quite a bit, and Nate sending them all over the place to be able to support. We got a super supportive group of people and responsive group of people. When you look at maintenance, you'd love to be able to say that we're always just proactive and we're on top of everything, but the nature of that business is it's going to be reactive because things happen every single day. And so while we're all making these plans for summer projects and whatnot, that doesn't really include all of the stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis. And Nate and his crew has been really wonderful doing that. If you've seen the new carpet in the PAC, that's a highlight. A lot of work done over at Redwood with the water line repair, new HVAC in the last couple of years in a number of schools, and constantly having to monitoring all that goes into that. Really looking forward, especially for us over at North. I know I'm exiting, but I'm really happy to see that we're going to get a new Century playground for our site-based classrooms. GP Flex is in the works for October 1st, as Keith has shared, but a lot of the work that's being done has safety in mind. So what's available on the playgrounds and what has to be replaced, the new playgrounds that are coming in, safety fencing, all in an effort to keep our kids healthy, safe, and able to learn. So appreciate Nate and his crew for all that they're doing over there. Information systems, wouldn't be able to put on this for the community if it wasn't for all of our great guys that are working in our IS department. When we went to COVID, we basically had to become a one-to-one district to make sure that kids could receive an education at home, and primarily at the secondary schools, maybe a little bit at the elementary. We've continued to be a one-to-one. And that requires a lot of work for our team to maintain those devices, to monitor and protect our kids, to make sure they're not doing things that they're supposed to. But the number of Chromebooks that I see coming in every day that need to have maintenance and repaired is really high, and we're one school. So I know the same is true at South High School, and I'm sure it's the case for everywhere else. So just the ability to maintain those is really challenging. A lot of safety things, two-factor authentication to make sure that we're doing everything we can to avoid any type of cyber attacks. There'll be some increased work. All of our teachers who retired at the end had 2 more safety trainings to complete to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, to make sure that we're keeping our information and our people as safe as possible. Transitioning a couple classrooms at the high school to labs, working on outdoor wireless experiences at the elementaries for some outdoor classrooms. And just think about how many teachers, every single person in the district has a computer, a monitor, a phone sitting in front of them. So being able to support 900 employees and all the students in the schools is quite the undertaking. And then the transition from an old financial system to a new one is going to be quite the endeavor, but something that will pay dividends as we move down the road. So appreciative for everything that they do. We can't function when technology goes down, so we've got a really supportive group of people, and thank them for that. Finish up with Print Shop real quick. Even though we have moved to a primarily digital world, then the number of copies that have to be run in the Print Shop never seems to be decreasing. And while I'm not going to say I'm always just a fan of a worksheet, the ability to interact with paper, pencil, and something sitting in front of you and not spend every single second in front of a screen, there's value in that. So we're appreciative of everything that Heather and her crew is doing over there. There'll be nearly 32,000 orders that they filled over the course of this year, which is pretty tremendous with a group of 3. They will continue working throughout the summer. They're already working on next year's print requests from teachers, and teachers are pretty well planned, and there's a lot of work that's already being done, so that eases the burden for teachers when they return back to school during in-service week, so they can focus on the kids knowing that their materials are going to be there. So thanks to Heather and the crew over there, all the work that they've done. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Any questions for anybody? Yeah? Okay, so throughout the document, there's questions on the, hold on, let me see if I can do that. There's question slides, and that's really just so that we can hold the questions for a moment so we can breeze through sections at a time. And yeah, yes.
I'd just like to mention, first of all, thank you to all the administrators and program leaders who gave their reports tonight. Sometimes when you get a lengthy document at a budget committee meeting, you don't have time to wade through all the detail, but looking through this during these presentations, there's a lot of great information in here, and it's sometimes easy to lose sight of what the dollars that this committee, appropriates and then the board finally adopts, to hear about what those dollars really translate into. I'm particularly impressed with the improvements and the strides you guys are making, not only in the classroom structure that's traditionally been District 7, but also these new innovative programs that are designed to get more kids into school and completing school. So I encourage Budget Committee members to wade through this material because it is very detailed. And there's even a map where the October 1st GP Plex site is going to be set up. So just a general caveat, when you see me put on my broken readers, don't assume that a retiree on fixed income can't afford to get glasses at the dollar store, but that's what happens. So thank you. So please continue.
So, yeah, this is just a reminder of all of the students that are being supported by all of you wonderful administrators and teachers and staff, and all of that happens because we can put a budget together that helps support the facilities and the people that are doing the work. So, just a quick reminder that you guys are looking at and approving a budget that is the third largest school district in Southern Oregon, and 11 schools and 5 support departments.
Who's number 2?
Yeah.
Who's number 2?
Ahead
The honkers.
The Honkers, the Pelicans.
Huh?
I'm a city.
Oh,
Klamath County.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Now we'll start talking about those budget reductions.
What's confidential staff? What does that mean? On here, when it says there's 17 confidential staff.
For example, Tanya
Oh, okay.
would be confidential staff. Those are folks that are not part of the classified union, not part of the certified union, and are not administrators, but do a lot of the support work for the district. So,
We can't talk about it.
So I wanted to, this is our historic ADMW. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Debbie.
Well, so trying to keep track of some of this, but I noticed a discrepancy in the number of employees the district actually has. One place in the proposed budget slide thing, it says 862 employees and the breakdown. And then the business department mentions supporting 903 district staff. Have we already cut some?
No cuts. One of them includes our temporary employees and the other one does not include it. So I probably should have made a note of that.
So, well, this one says 8 temps for classified and 5 temps for teachers, but, so the 903 is actually adds in more substitutes, is that what's going on?
Hold on. So yes, so so that number does change because we do hire temps and we have subs and stuff like that. So I can get you a current number. Some of the slide presentation was put together. This actually, the budget book had to get redone multiple times just with changes. And so it is a little bit fluid. I try to put dates on it when, like, as of this date. So even like our ADMW, or not our ADMW, but our ADMR, that it just changes. So, but that's, yes, I can get you a current number. But one of them does include our temps and the other one doesn't.
Okay, I just thought 40 was a significant number.
They also include our people who only coach.
What's that?
Might be just people who only coach sports too, as opposed to have other positions in the district.
Yeah, and I can provide a breakdown of exactly what that is.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question about questions. Hi, new guy. At what point, I think you said that there's going to be a slide, at what point do we start asking a little bit more specific questions?
So my hope, so this is kind of like, kind of reference material, like our ADMW, those are just kind of like historic pieces of information. And so what I tried to do is put question breaks at what I thought were reasonable spots. So when we go over the historic stuff, we'll have a question period. So if you could just jot down the questions, it makes it easier to group it together. But if you have something that's pressing, we can pause.
I have nothing that's pressing.
Okay.
I have lots of questions. I'm going to not ask all, as you, my cohorts up here can see, I did 180 pages of questions, but I'm not going to grace everybody with that.
Well, we can stay till midnight if you'd
so,
like,
no.
and then, Trish, we
No.
don't get to leave at 8.
I don't
Just
think
kidding.
anybody else would appreciate me very much if we did that.
Well, I do want you guys to be very comfortable with the numbers and where we're at with things. And sometimes it gets answered as I move through the presentation, and if it's not, then
This,
definitely act.
this would have been great to have when I was doing this. 'Cause this helped a lot of my, I could have saved money on highlighters.
That one took a little longer to compile, but moving forward, we'll try to get them out at a similar time. Okay, so moving forward, historic ADMW, our historic English language learners, our numbers have kind of, wait, what am I at? Did I skip a page? Oh, I did skip a page. All right, here's our historical special needs population. And this is the state compensates an additional weighted average, or weighting, excuse me, up to 11% of our special needs population. Over what? Of special, yes, up to 11% of our total special needs population. Our historic English language learners. And this is just the additional demographics for pregnant and parenting students that we have and students in foster care. And the reason why we track these numbers is the additional weighting that we get when we talk about students that have additional supports or students that need additional support. So for instance, the students on IEP special education, we get an additional weighting, full weighting. English language learners, we get 1.5 weightings. Pregnant and parenting, you get additional weighting. Foster care, 1.25. Poverty, 1.25. And this slide here is what we get from the state, and it's kind of hard to see. Hopefully you can see it better on your slides that are in front of you, but it does show all of the additional weightings that we have on here for grants passed. And also it kind of highlights the difference between the 22-23 school year, which is our current year, and then what they're expecting for next year. So we'll just kind of follow that. I just wanted to make sure that, sir.
The SPED page, so is that number the number we get paid on, or is that just how many we have?
That is how many. And that number changes often.
So it's the December 1st count for the district. So the 822, I think we passed 822. Right. And we don't get a double weighting on all of them. That 822 would represent about 15% of our total district population. We only get paid up to 11% of the district population. So what would that be? About 600.
622.
So you said that there's additional funds that cover with a 1.0 weighting for the kids that.
It's a double weighting. So for that first 11%, that's 622 students, we receive a double weight for them, which means we get paid twice. But that also means there's 200 other students that also receive services, additional services, that we don't receive extra funding for.
In the back of the budget highlights book is a glossary of terms, and it explains the difference between ADMR, ADMW, and things like that. Sometimes that.
On the SPED page, you put a line with the number for how many we get paid for.
Oh, that would be, yeah, that's a great idea. I can do that. Next year.
The number that we get paid for is a weighted ADM, is what we're saying. Historically, we for a long time did not exceed the 11% cap on special ed, so we got a full double weighting. But as Tommy mentioned, every year special needs population, and this is not uncommon statewide to go in excess of 11%. It's just that the double weighting, stops at the 11%. The other point I want to make, because I didn't know we've gone past that slide, but the historic ADMW slide, I think, is important for particularly new members to take a look at, because it really does a great job of illustrating the systemic reduction in enrollment that came up during the COVID years. And although we're making progress, that is still a significant drop-off of the revenue lifeblood of the district. Now, the COVID ESSER relief funds that this district received, which this committee talked about at length last year during this same time, those funds are starting to dry up. And Nefeli's going to go into some detail about what that might mean looking forward. But when I put this in historical context as to the downturns in revenue due to prior recessions, for example, in 2001 to 3, 2007 to 9, we always knew that money was going to come back because the economy went down, state school funding got pinched, and then the economy came back and they were able to give more money to K-12 education. In this particular case, the key is going to be how much we can restore that ADMW, or this will be a permanent reduction in what we otherwise would have received. And the key to that is not just what's going on in our district, but what's going on in districts across the state. In other words, our percentage of the statewide ADMW historically has been about 1%. So every time the state school fund goes up by $100 million, we got $1 million, 1% of that. Now we're down about 0.97, 0.98. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you apply that small percentage to a large pot of money, we're seeing some loss in revenue. So I think this slide right here is very good for the budget committee to focus on, because that 6615 is what these innovative programs administrators and Superintendent Sweeney have talked about tonight, that we're trying to build back so we get more closer to that 1% of statewide ADMW. And that will result in a significant increase in available state school funding going forward.
I wanted to share with the board, since you brought that up, that we've already received 112 new interdistrict transfers into Grants Pass for next year. That's up 3 from when you talked to Nefeli earlier today. So it was 109 this morning. We added 3 more this afternoon. We anticipate that continuing to go up as our ad campaign. We have a radio campaign going on right now, and we'll be putting this other video clip out on social media in the next day or two as we start moving forward. We had 230-ish.
237 in, 37 out.
So 200 plus 200 on interdistrict transfers in last year. We anticipate something similar to that this year. We think we're creating programs that not only will bring students to D7, but will also keep students in D7. For example, we had a family today or yesterday that handed in an interdistrict transfer to go out of district to another school. And I've instructed Tanya that every time we get one of those, somebody has to contact the family and say, what are we doing wrong so that we can fix it? And they just weren't aware that we were offering an online school. So Keith called them up today, said, we want to keep you here. And they're like, holy cow, we didn't even know you had GP Flex and we could stay in Grants Pass. So it's retaining and gaining. Those are the things we're working on at the time.
And the main inflow is still from Three Rivers School District, Danny, is that right? And is there a cap mechanism in place, or is that pretty well whoever wants to go can come? Okay.
Yes.
So help me understand, because I obviously understand our desire to retain and grow as we should, obviously. And then obviously try to gain in revenue as we would like so that we can cover as many programs as possible. But we're also looking at a net 600 loss of students, which would also mean a net 600 less kids that we would have to be spending money on that we would be bringing in for revenue. So what is the divergence there that we're losing the revenue, but we're also losing the students? So why is there a bigger loss to revenue than there is relative to students? I guess that's what I'm kind of trying to chop up.
If I understand the question, I think the biggest answer I can give you is that if we've lost 600 students, why haven't we reduced staff to correspond so that what we did do.
Or whatever.
We have done some reductions in the past. Right? Last year, we cut 13 elementary teachers, for example. But what we're seeing is that the students that are coming to us are such high needs compared to previous generations. A lot of that from COVID-19. That we really need to have more supports in classrooms, not fewer supports. So we really are trying to find ways to meet these extraordinary needs that we're seeing from our students. Even if they're not identified on a 504 plan or needing special education services, the need for social and emotional support is higher than we've seen in the nation, not just D7, previously. Am I saying that well? The other thing that we're seeing is that when students are coming to us on interdistrict transfers, particularly from a neighboring district, many of them are coming to us with an IEP already in place. So we are having to meet those needs as well. We don't get to exclude a student from coming in on an interdistrict transfer because they have special needs. But one last thing I think is important, and John will tell you this as well, is that we're always paid on the better of any 2 years in the state budget or in our state funds. So we had a real significant dip, okay? So we received payment for the year previous to that. We weren't punished for having this significant dip. Then this year, we came back up. So we got the better of the 2 years, which was this year. So this really horrible gap of losing those students, we weren't punished for financially by the state. We didn't see that reduction in our ADMW. It's one of the safety things, nets that the state puts in place for any school district in case there's some big ebbs and flows in ADM. So
Yeah, there's a number of moving parts here that come into play. If you're admitting inter-district transfers on an IEP and you've already reached your 11% max at the state school funding level, then you're actually going to be paying more to service that kid, but you're not going to get any extra weighting from the state. So,
well, and that's what I was trying to figure out as part of the last kind of explanation as well, is if the students, and this might be, sorry, I haven't done this before, so I'm just asking questions.
That's all right.
If the students are being double weighted that are in there in that 11%, wouldn't that then cover the additional, what are we at, like 17% or
about 15% of our students.
And listen, my daughter is one of them, so I obviously it's near and dear to my heart. But wouldn't that cover them being double weighted? Wouldn't that cover some of the students that are not weighted? Is that not how it works?
Depends on the severity of the need.
Gotcha.
Right. And another part of the ADM, which I think is critical for folks to understand, is that it's not just our general fund, it's also our student success account, our student investment account, our resolution dollars from the ESD. Those are all based on our ADM. So if we bring in 200 extra students and maybe 50 of them have some needs that will cost us more than we're going to receive funding for, yes, that's in general fund terms probably accurate, but we're going to receive so many other dollars in other places that we will see some offset to that.
I guess I'd have one other sort of answer to that. When your growth is slow or your decline is slow, you can optimize your facilities and things of that nature. When you have step changes, just because you have 400 less students You can't just downsize to 400 less students immediately. It takes, if it was an entire building's worth, you'd have to shut down the whole building. Well, that's not going to happen in a short period of time. So step changes are really hard on the optimizing part of the budget.
Right, no, I definitely get that. It's other pieces of the puzzle that I'm trying to figure out through this conversation that are more specific that we don't need to spend too much time.
So my thought process is that the waiting system, wait, you're going to have to make that low cap and 11% fall short of the curve. That's going to bother you. So you have to fall short of the curve. There are patients who can't say 11%, but the other 15%. Yeah. And that's really what happens, because then you have to spread that money out over those children, all the same children, who all in our heart, dedicated to and giving them the same that they deserve, but we're giving them less. And so I feel, I don't know who does that in this movement. Probably at some things, maybe we want to committee work is beneficial. So let's get some models together. How can we do this? Education.
I couldn't agree more.
I would just want to remind you guys to turn your speakers on when you're speaking so that we can make sure we get everything recorded.
Is the green light not on?
Green light is on.
All right. So we have your state school fund, your ADM formula. I just wanted to highlight where those kind of, how to read that document, mostly for the newer folks. This here, so the section that's highlighted in blue, that's the extended ADMW number, and then that ties back on the page right afterwards. That's the number right there, the 6,615. And right now, the total formula per ADMW is a 10,260. And so that's where we get our local state revenue. Our local revenue is deducted out of that. So our taxes, our local taxes comes off of that state school fund.
And just a point of clarification, that's based on a $9.9 billion.
Yeah, that particular slide is the only one that we have published so far, so we're still waiting on the 10.2, which is the good news slide right there. But yeah, so that slide is based on the $9.9 billion budget. So this one, what I really want to do is highlight the increase expected in this upcoming 23-24 budget. So in the budget book, you will see that $1,470,000 increase over the $9.9 billion budget. And it also provides an increase because it's a 49% this year and then a 51% next year. It's an actual larger increase next year. Okay, any questions on where we're at so far? All right. Couple of quick budget basics. We have our beginning fund balance, You add the revenue to that, which is also called resources. You mix in all of the expenses. We have our must-have expenses, which are like payroll, taxes, PERS, software, electricity, things like that. We have flexible expenses, things like training and travel, some supplies and material, extracurricular activities, and things of that nature. And then we have our goal expenses, which are things like sync funds, things that we would like to do that we think are important to do. So you mix all that in, and so long as your beginning fund balance and your revenue is larger than your expenses, you get an ending fund balance. And the board has directed us to have a 5% ending fund balance. So that's the goal. The next slide here is what you'll see in your budget book. So this is the first slide where you'll see on page 31 in the corner. So if you look in your actual budget book, you will see these numbers. It shows our beginning fund balance at $6,599,422. It has our local revenue, our intermediate, state, and federal revenues in there for a total resources of $86 million. From there, it has a summary of all the different expenses, our instruction, support services, facilities acquisition, transfers and contingency. Total revenue or total resources, has to match our total liabilities or uses, and the difference is our ending fund balance. The next slide has a picture of all of the different funds and the resources. You can find that information in your budget book or your proposed budget book on pages 20 to 21. And what I tried to highlight here is the differences between our 22-23 school year, so this year, with what's changed for next school year. This slide here, it has the exact same information. It just shows in percentages. So this is for all funds. So you'll find that information on the same pages, but basically the general fund accounts for 65% of our total revenue. And then our next largest area of revenue is from our SIA, High School Success, and other grants that we get. So the next largest share, and then the rest of them are all fairly small. This slide here, our general fund resources, what we're highlighting is the percentage of the general fund that each of the different types of revenue within our general fund make up. So we have our state school fund revenue, which is 59%. Our non-formula revenue is at 24%. And we have ESSER funds and federal forest fees at 9%. And then our beginning fund balance is at 8%. This slide represents the exact same information, but in a pie chart. Some people like numbers, some people like charts. That's what it is, but ultimately recognizing that 59% of our general fund comes from the state school fund. Whoops. This next slide just looks at historically our state school fund and our property taxes, common school fund, and federal forest fees. One thing you'll notice is that federal forest fees were included as part of our state school fund revenue, and they no longer are, so they come to us separately, and it's not part of that formula. And this just, again, same information, but in a different format, so you can kind of see at the $10.2 billion budget news that we got on, I think it was May 24th, that increased our estimated state school fund revenue there. This has a lot of information. This goes back to the 2018-2019 budget year, in case anybody, I like to look at trends, and so To me, that kind of information is helpful. Throughout the document, I probably should have noted that on any of these charts, especially when I'm looking or comparing year over year, the year that we're looking at as far as our proposed budget is highlighted in yellow. So it kind of makes it easy for your eyes to move to that. Overall, just from last year and the year before, the main decreases are due to the decrease in ESSER dollars to the district.
Going back to that pie chart just for a minute on the general fund revenue, I think it's important for the committee to realize that the state school fund formula revenue is actually the state school fund plus property taxes and those other elements that are in there. So at the end of the day, the percentage of the total general fund revenue that's driven through the state school fund formula is a huge number. It's a very large number. And the other part is that the way that this equalization formula was set up and why it was set up the way it was to equalize across the state. Districts that have low property tax bases get topped up more with state level dollars, and districts that have high property tax bases get fewer state level dollars. But the idea is that on balance, they get the same number of dollars per ADM. So that's the mechanics behind behind that equalization formula.
Do we have any idea what our local funds generate? Is there a way to reverse the formula?
Yeah, actually, that's broken out in that chart, that state school fund, yeah, it's right. It's this box right here. Yeah, it shows that those component pieces include property taxes, common school fund, ESD equalization, although there's something happening with that, I think Nefeli mentioned, but that's the local revenue piece. Yeah.
So Nefeli, I am just a little bit surprised that property tax revenue we're projecting is $1 million more than it was last year.
So that's what they've estimated. That's the numbers that they have given us, that they have provided to us.
Okay. And then what is recruitment and retention money?
So this year in 22-23, it was the HB 4030, and we received $714,000, and that was to recruit and retain quality teachers and staff. And it's a little, I don't know why they use the same number. It's also HB 3040 or 4030, excuse me. And that one is it's actually training substitutes. So it's the purpose of it is different, but it's the same number. But we don't get that again this year, the HB 4030. That did flow into our general funds this year, but we're not getting that next year.
So I'm looking at the $8,170,000 we're not getting next year.
I'm not sure what you're looking. Let me go.
Okay, so back to the pie chart. This green segment is what I'm asking about.
Are you looking at the all revenue one or the general fund?
So there's the general fund. There's a green section that's under.
So the recruitment, so that is a super, super light green. It doesn't even show up on this chart. It's like it's a sliver. Green is ESSER.
Oh,
So that's the ESSER funds.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. It wasn't enough to be a percent.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the next part of the slide is the non-formula revenue. So it's not a very large amount, but I did want to show the difference. It does flow into our general fund. And I just wanted to show the changes year over year from the 2020-21 to the current year, and then what we're proposing moving forward. Those amounts typically stay fairly constant. This slide is our ESSER revenue slide. And so the top part of it just shows with the amount that we received for ESSER 2, the total award amount, ESSER 3, and then the learning loss, which is 20% of the ESSER 3 dollars. The amount that was claimed through the end of last year. The next column is the amount that was spent through February, and then the expense balance, and then the amount that's been allocated through the rest of this year. So all the way to the right, the 7.855, that 7.8 million is what we're expecting to have left to carry into the 23-24 budget. And we'll talk a little bit more about the ESSER dollars towards the end of this conversation. So any other questions so far on the revenue pieces?
Do the ESSER funds, is that the funds that have a timeline to be spent?
They do.
And that's this upcoming year?
Yes. Well, not all of them.
The last tranche.
For ESSER 3.
For this last bit here. Yeah, the ESSER money, I mean, this week, it's very, I think it's important for the committee to focus on it because it's really going to be the centerpiece of how the balancing act over this budget, next year's budget, knowledge of how those funds work and how the district should access the remaining balance of those funds is critical because obviously without nearly $21 million of ESSER COVID relief money during a year when the systemic ADMW dropped by 500 to 600 students, it would have been a total different picture in this district. And so I remember last year when this discussion was had, there was still a good chunk of change left in the ESSER pot. There still is a good chunk of change left in the ESSER pot, depending on what may be claimed for the balance of this fiscal year as well as in next year's budget, but that amount is diminishing. And so the challenge is going to be how do you, and Superintendent Sweeney mentioned that in his budget message, that the hope is that, the staffing costs can be fully absorbed by the general fund, by going forward into at the end of this next year. But it's that dynamic, I think, that this committee is going to need to focus on generally in order, if it doesn't impact the decision this committee makes in terms of the discussion might be informative to the board going forward in next year where we have 4 new board members being elected to the board, have been elected to the board. Thank you.
Okay, on to expenditures. This slide, it goes over how much has been allocated to salaries, associated payroll costs, purchase services, supplies and materials, capital outlay, insurance, taxes and fees, transfers, contingencies, and the ending fund balance. And so you can see on the right-hand side, the page numbers, well, you can't see it on the slide, but it's pages 33 to 34 in your budget book, or proposed budget book, if you'd like to take a look. One of the things I did want to point out is that the ending fund balance as is 5.63%. If we take into consideration the contingency, that increases the ending fund balance to 6.37%. This slide just shows expenditures in the general fund by function, so instruction, support services, all of the same items that I listed before. And the slide after that is a visual of that same data. And you can see that instruction and support services, instruction is our highest, where we spend the most. And the next slide after that it's just different ways to look at the same data and information. The next one is expenditures by object. That's also found on page 33 to 34. And the slide after that is a visual of the same information. Payroll and associated payroll costs being the highest cost in our district.
Well, you could take a minute to explain the major variances in that listing that you have there, particularly focusing. We know the roll-up costs are included in salaries and associated payroll costs, but looking down to things like transfers and the contingency, indicating why there's been such a significant movement there?
For sure. Let me go back to that slide so we're all looking at the same. That's slide 35. I don't know if your slides pages are numbered, but we're on this
It's
one.
page 45 in the highlights book.
Oh, page 45 in the highlights book. Thank you. So if we talk about transfers, which is the 700 objects, this year we had budgeted $4 million from ESSER to get moved into a debt reserve account. So that way we can pay for our debt service for the HVAC. And so that's where that large $4 million in transfers came from. This year, the $600,000 in transfers is going towards paying for the debt service, as well as the $200,000 for the SYNC fund, for the capital project SYNC fund. The, let's see, the other one is the contingency. I can't recall the purpose for why we put that much into contingency. Do you recall?
Yeah, I do. I think last year, what you're finding is both the interfund transfer number and the contingency number were overinflated last year because they both represented some utilization of COVID funds that were either not appropriated, but she wanted to have, or the budget committee wanted to have them available to spend if necessary. So they were appropriated but not used, and then used explained the reason for the transfer drop. And so that's why I think the significant variance movement, those important for this committee to understand why those numbers have dropped so precipitously.
Thank you. And so this slide right here, these are just the major changes between our revenue, our resources, increases and decreases, as well as the variances and expenditures. And again, it's just a reminder that they both have to balance. One of the questions that is asked a lot is what percent of our payroll and salaries and associated payroll costs is of the entire budget what percentage of our payroll is our total budget? And it is, at this point, it is under 80%, which is shown on the slide. I think it's 79.71%. I also outlined some of the other, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, so you can kind of see some of the differences between this year and then the proposal for next year.
What is associated payroll?
Taxes, insurance,
PERS.
PERS being the biggest one.
FICA, PERS.
50%?
Huh?
So our overhead costs for an employee are 50% approximately.
No, it's 27.66%. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know, go back to the slide. So salaries are going to be 52%, associated payroll is 27%.
So total 79%.
Right? So I'm assuming associated payroll is about half of salaries.
I think, Danny, don't we usually put that about 38%?
Yes, somewhere between 0.35 and 0.38. $100 salary will cost you $135 to pay all the associated costs.
But that looks like 50%.
This is a percentage of the total general fund.
Doesn't really matter. 27 times 2 is 54.
The biggest, other than PERS, which is $10 million out of the total associated payroll costs, about $24 million, Social Security is $3 million, and healthcare is over $9 million of the associated payroll costs. So I don't know how that works out in terms of your percentage of loading if you wanted to take a new employee, but when you add health insurance in there, it raises it quite a bit. So that's why it's so rich.
Any other questions on expenditures? All right. The next slide, I just wanted to highlight some of the requests and from the Budget Committee and our board.
Quick question, do we want to take a 5-minute break to stretch and use the restroom? Anybody feeling the need, or are we okay? I'm seeing Corey is definitely.
I drank way too much water, sorry.
Is that okay?
Ready?
All right. So we want to talk at this point of, I just want to talk through some of the different things that have come to us from the Budget Committee, board members, specific requests. And, hold on. Maybe. There we go. And this is super tiny. You guys can read it, but the basic pieces that I wanted to touch on is the request was to have an ending fund balance at or above 5%, and the proposed ending fund balance that's presented is at 5.63%. The second request was to reduce ESSER reliance on payroll expenses, which is what we've provided in this budget. It's a 41% reduction. And we will talk about ESSER in particular, a little bit of a different strategy towards the end. So it'll solve this question here in a minute. Number 3 is important to retain the best teachers and staff. And we were able to accomplish that, and we have settled negotiations with we have settled completely, right? Signed or classified? Not signed? Okay. We have settled with classified? Sorry.
We have reached a tentative agreement on a new contract with the classified employees. But let's be clear, it was only an opener on pay and insurance, and each side got a couple of articles. Whereas with the certified side, it's a complete contract renegotiation. So that's one's going to take long.
Taking a little longer. 4 was to increase CTE opportunities in the district, and Superintendent Sweeney touched on that. Number 5 was to improve and repair district facilities, and through debt restructuring, we're able to secure up to $13 million for maintenance and capital improvement needs throughout the district. Number 6 was to create if we were able to, a capital projects or a capital sink fund, which is really just a savings for future capital needs, and we were able to set aside $200,000 towards that, and which is part of that $600,000 budget transfer that we talked about a little earlier. Number 7 was to prioritize district maintenance needs, and when we went through the capital needs list, we identified $212,000 worth of maintenance projects, capital projects that the maintenance folks could work on. for existing buses that the state school fund allocates towards that. And that comes out of our state school fund. So when we do get our $10.2 billion state school fund paper, from that total, we move $500,000 into our bus depreciation fund. And that helps us purchase additional buses. I'm going to run through the next few slides fairly quickly unless there's some specific questions. We did present this to the board 3 months ago, 2 months ago? A while ago, a little bit ago.
It was in, it would have been in February,
February, March, February?
end of February.
Okay, around the February timeframe. We went into detail about the integrated planning module. Basically, there are 6 state and federal grants. The Grants Pass School District is awarded the High School Success Grant, the Student Investment Account, and the Early Indicator and Intervention System. If any of you need this information, there's a couple of ways I can get it for you. One, if you want to look into it a little bit more or go back on it, it's on our website, and we can also get printed copies on really large paper if you want to look through all of the details again. But basically, at the top of this slide, you'll see Fund 251 is the Student Investment Account Fund, and you'll see the total there. 4.3 million in the upcoming year. Our high school success, which is Measure 98, that's Fund 252, and that's about 1.7 million. And then the other one, the Early Indicator and Intervention System, that's a very, very small grant. It's 16,000, but we still have to report on it. And so these slides here represent the outcomes. So outcome A, just as a reminder to from our first meeting. It's Grants Pass District 7 will increase academic outcomes and achievement for all students, including at-risk subpopulations as measured by our graduation rate. And so the goal of the integrated plan was, well, there's lots of different goals, but from the budgetary standpoint was to see how the funds that we receive, how we can accomplish similar or different objectives and different goals using multiple different funding streams. So that's kind of what this represents. This next slide represents outcome B, which you can see there's on this one, there's a high school success and SIA grants that go towards this outcome, which is Grants Pass District 7 will provide wraparound supports for student mental and physical well-being. And this one is outcome C, which is increased opportunities for students to experience a well-rounded education. And so it has the amounts of funding that go towards each of those objectives and outcomes, strategies and outcomes, excuse me. And so on this slide, I just wanted to show how in the budget book, if you look at page 55 to 98, I know it's a large range, but that's where you'll see the funds that are outside of the general fund. So funds, it's 200 to 279 that incorporate our SIA and Measure 98 dollars. Any questions on that section?
So an SIA is approximately half of the whatever tax Oregon instituted. SIA was 50%, something else was 30%, something else was 20%, early intervention or something. So we get the SIA part as long as we appropriately report to the state. The other 50% was grant things you have to apply for, but the pot of money in terms of District 7's share should be about equivalent to the SIA dollars, which was $4 million-ish. So it doesn't look like we were successful on the grant part for the other 50%, is there stuff we're doing to?
Well, the 20% for early learning, that's for pre-K programs.
Right.
And we don't do that. Okay, so that would cover that. What's the 30%? Do you remember?
It's a statewide education initiatives account.
Yeah, this is a weird area to understand.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So one of the things we are having conversations about is starting a pre-K program. We're at the infancy portion of that. Interesting for early learning to say infancy, right? We hope to start having, and if Susan's out there, she's going to disagree with me. I hope to have students in pre-K classrooms by September of 24. She's thinking September of 25. But we would want to start capturing some of those early learning dollars. So this is a program that we've talked about with the board, and we've received funding from Ford Family, All Care, and one other one to begin the process. So we have hired Annie Blanchard to be the TOSA in charge of early learning. They've covered her costs, salary costs for that, and we want to start implementing a program in the near future so that we can start capturing some of that 20% that you talked about. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And she has commented.
There's a really good chart on the ODE student success page that shows all the breakdown of the statewide educator initiatives. Count that 30%, which includes high school success, the early indicator intervention system. So it's a great breakdown of what can be in those two content. It's like the essay.
Is the SSA and SIA monies, I think member Richardson brought up last year at this meeting, those are funded by a recurring or tax stream, is that correct?
Corporate activity tax, which is called the CAT tax.
So that corporate activity tax, at least until they repeal it, is an evergreen source of revenue that goes to a specific area. And are those dollars, in terms of how you can use them, are they restricted to the point where really if we're going to be facing an ESSER funding cliff, we can't be looking to those funds in some way for relief? Is that a fair statement?
Correct. Those are, so the reason I know that you had this conversation in February is because we had to have all that into the state of Oregon by March with the board approval. So they're very specific on how we can spend those dollars. I do want to say that this is not shown in this budget. The corporate activity tax on the May 17th revenue forecast was up quite a bit. And on the May 24th budget forecast for K-12, we will see an increase in those areas. We will be more than fully funded. We'll be at about 105% of what they anticipated we would be for that. Also not shown in this budget, because we haven't received real indication yet from the state of Oregon, is the governor's wanting $140 million for early literacy programs, which is different than early education program, which is one of the areas that Gary was talking about. The early literacy, we should be seeing, we anticipate around $500,000 additional dollars to Grants Pass School District for next year as well. We don't know exactly how we can spend that money, but we do believe that the textbooks we have for adoption for K-12, or excuse me, K-5 literacy will be able to be spent in that realm instead of out of the general fund. So that we will see a significant savings with that early literacy funds coming to the district.
So as a general statement, then, any increase in corporate activities tax that may benefit an SSA allocated amount for this district or SIA allocated amount for this district is something that would not be available to use on expenditures that would otherwise be borne by the general fund. It would be on new expenditures and new initiatives in these target areas?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But just so the budget committee is aware, a lot of work with our behavior intervention specialists at the elementary school come out of that program. A lot of the social emotional support that you see in the district comes from those programs. So that was really the target when they created the students investment account, to give our students more support outside the classroom so they'd be more successful in the classroom.
And all of those details are in the documents online.
Very good, thank you.
Look at that one.
That's why we printed it large for you. We went through a process with all of the different sites and schools where we identified the list of capital needs project or capital projects and the needs throughout the district, both maintenance and capital projects. And we came up with, it was, I don't have the exact number, but, and again, they were estimates as far as the cost, but over $30 million worth of maintenance and, requirements that we have here. So several of you that are on the board were a part of the decision and the process to go through a debt restructuring and to get up to $13 million. So this is the prioritized capital needs list. One of the things I wanted to point out on this list is that we submitted for a new roof, not a new roof, but, well, I guess for a new roof, but for a seismic grant. We received one of them this year, a seismic rehabilitation grant, so I do have that for Lincoln. And so we will submit that again for, I believe is it Redwood? Yeah, for Redwood. For next year. So if we do get that, then that will fall off the list and free up additional funds for other projects.
One question. It's about third of the way down for GPHS program 18-21 for 700,000. What is that related to? Oh, there.
Oh,
there
yeah,
we go. Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you.
18 to 21 is the age. The age range for that. Yeah, that same one. It's actually a really big spreadsheet, so trying to squish it down was fun. But the main point on this capital projects list is that the debt for the capital for this new debt restructuring is still under 2% of our general operating budget. And if you want more information on the debt restructuring, it's in the budget highlights book. It's on page 60. Could be helpful. I also wanted to just point out, which I just said a second ago, that we did get the seismic rehabilitation grant for Lincoln. And we'll apply for Redwood for next year. And the next couple of slides, I wanted to talk about some of the issues that are facing the district and some possible solutions. The biggest one being the ESSER funding cliff, which I think has been talked about for maybe the last couple of years. And also we have a potential delay or most probable delay in the budget getting passed by June. So if we do have a delay on the June 13th budget committee meeting, or excuse me, on the June 13th board meeting, we're going to be requesting that the board allows us to borrow against our PERS reserve fund to cover some of the July and August payments if needed. So we're still not 100% sure we're going to need that because we have another potential solution in place, but that is one way to solve that problem for us.
So can I go into a little more detail?
Yeah.
Right. So just so folks are understanding, the Senate Republicans at the state legislature have walked out. There is no indication that they're coming back anytime soon. The sticking point seems to be House Bill 2002, and they're not going to come in until that's pulled off the table. The governor and the Democratic leadership have said they're not pulling it off the table. So the Republicans will not return to finish a state budget by June 25th, which is Sendai, the day that legislature has to end by state constitution, which then means we will not have an operating budget going forward for the state. The state did pass a continuing resolution, which allows us to operate at current funding levels till September 15th. On September 15th, the state will run out of money. So no one is anticipating that we will make it to September 15th without the leadership in the state capitol coming together and making a decision on a state budget. We do have reserves in our PERS fund and other areas that if push came to shove, we could operate the district until probably November? October, another month or two. But we fully anticipate the governor will call a special session, which will deal only with the budget and no other legislative items. So initially, the Republicans in the Senate had agreed to come back on June 25th and simply pass a budget, but they're not going to at this current time. So that is if we don't pass a state budget by June 25th. Okay.
So that's kind of a cash flow solution. The other cash flow solution is to claim the balance of our ESSER funds by 6/30 this year. And there's a couple of really good reasons to do that. One is the money is not sitting out there for someone else to potentially pull back at any point in time. Not that that's a high likelihood, but it is a risk because it's not realized revenue for us at this point.
Let me follow up with that. Just so you are aware, when the president and the Speaker of the House came up with their debt ceiling, increasing the debt ceiling limit, they said they were going to claw back any unused ESSER funds across the nation. Now, we don't know if that means K-12 or not, but we do want to make sure we're prepared to spend our ESSER funds before they can get them out of our hands. Okay? So that's just follow up there.
Thank you. The other positive is if we submit the claims for our ESSER money to be reimbursed, we get a cash influx of about $8 million this year, which it does increase our ending fund balance, which then increases our beginning fund balance, but it does provide that cash flow solution for us. And the other piece that Sam came up with as well was that our accountant, Sam right there, he does a lot of wonderful work for us, thank you, is that money sitting in our account does earn interest, and interest rates aren't too shabby these days, so that's also another reason why it might be a good idea to spend it down this year. And when I say spend it down, it really, all it does is, and I'll show you on the next few slides how it's a net zero when we're talking about beginning and ending fund balances. It also cures, or not cures, but it fixes a lot of the questions, and especially some that I had initially when I was looking at it, is how do we account for this money that's actually reimbursable money? It's not in our pocket. So figuring out the accounting for that when you're not an accountant and you're a budget person is a little different. So it solves a lot of problems if we are able to do it that way. So I just wanted to show you, actually I'm gonna go, so skip ahead to the slide afterwards, which says using ESSER money by 6/30. The biggest thing I want to point out is if you look at this year, not this year, but the budget year that we're proposing, the 23-24, if you look at the ending fund balance there, the 4 million, sorry, my slide is really tiny, $4,587,234. The difference in the total difference sorry, did I not reflect that correctly in here? Shoot, I may have put the wrong slide in here. Basically, it doesn't change our projected ending fund balance the following year because our beginning fund balance is offset by the fact that we're not going to get the ESSER funds as a revenue next year. So I think I put the wrong slide in there, but that's what I wanted to show. So move back one slide, the 24-25 positioning and beyond. This is something that when we're looking at adopting the budget for 23-24, we are able to have a balanced budget and we're able to have the requested ending fund balance. But if all else stays the same and we just look at increases in payroll and associated payroll costs as well as other purchase services, it does put us without the ESSER money, additional ESSER money, it does put us at a negative. And then on top of that, if you look at the 5% requested ending fund balance on top of that, it puts us at close to a $7 million in the hole for the year following. So not this upcoming year, but the year after that looking forward. And that's if we don't get any additional ADM or any other changes. So I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we are working on and some of the things that change that landscape, which is why it's very fluid. So we showed on the slide initially that per ADMW, we're getting $10,260. And so 100 additional ADM is a little over $1 million in revenue to the district. So and just today, as Tim was explaining, or sorry, Superintendent Sweeney was explaining, we, in our interdistrict transfers, we just received 112, and we haven't even finished the school year. So that's in addition to what we already have. So it does change. But I did want to point out that it is something that we need to look at and be mindful of. So on here, where do we go from here? I want to just remind everyone that some of the things that the district is doing to increase revenue is really putting a lot of work and focus and energy on graduation rates and early reading, creating options and opportunities and starting a pre-K program like Mr. Sweeney was just explaining, enhancing GP Flex to attract additional student learning and people that learn and want that flexibility, which is pretty awesome. Opening up additional interdistrict transfer opportunities, growing and advertising our CTE program offerings, promoting and showing how Grants Pass District 7 is the premier district in Southern Oregon to not only learn, but to work and to thrive all together. The next part of this slide are things that we can do if enough revenue, like options that we have to look at as the year goes on, things we can do if not enough revenue is increased. We can reduce payroll through attrition. We can increase class sizes to maximum learning with the staff that we have. We can also do things like freezing spending and extra things of that nature. And also, worst case is evaluating non-essential staff and making layoffs where necessary. So our commitment as a team to a balanced budget is to evaluate ADM monthly at board meetings, which is what we currently do, and start looking at trends up, down, or if they're static. Evaluate and provide the board with monthly revenue and expenditure reports, which is also something that we do. One of my goals this upcoming year is to enhance that with a little bit more meat, I guess you could say, a little bit more detail so that we can look at trends, because that's, to me, very important. Also conducting quarterly evaluations of staffing and spending. The directors, we commit to talking about that and looking at the data. Doing a mid-year discussion on spending freezes, hires, retires, class sizes. And I guess the biggest point that I want to make is that we do take it seriously, and we, supporting our kids and making sure that they have the best teachers and the best programs does require a lot of work and does require us evaluating the dollars and cents at multiple intervals. And before we go on to what's next, we'll just see if there's any questions. Any blue cards? Got any blue cards?
I've not received any blue cards. Anybody have any comments or questions on the ESSER funding issue? I would like to take a minute, if we could, to go back to 63 and 64 in your booklet. I do think that the dynamic here is pretty well illustrated. And what Nefeli is speaking about is whether or not, and the reasons for doing so I think makes sense, to accelerate the claiming of the ESSER money, which will get it out of harm's way, possibly lead to some investment income with those dollars, provide a cash flow benefit as we turn the corner in kind of an unstable state school funding scenario. The basic point of those two slides is whether we claim the ESSER funds now and increase a beginning fund balance going into next year, or leave it as it is and have a lower beginning fund balance going into next year. The bottom line at the end of next year, if you see that column called 24-25 proposed budget, and I understand there's certain revenue assumptions in there that might be understating the potential growth in revenue because of ADMW increase efforts that are currently underway, and I'm hoping all those dominoes fall in the right direction. But what that chart is saying is that absent some significant swing, there's going to have to be some budgetary reductions in order to preserve a 5% ending fund balance at the end of 24-25. And that number's not insignificant, and I commend Superintendent Sweeney and Nefeli for going in and taking a look at some of the hard decisions that may need to be made. This body really needs to at least comment and get into the record whether or not some of those fiscal prudence or austerity steps need to be considered now for purposes of the 23-24 budget, or do you want to just say, you know what, we've got a good feeling about ADM increase, we've got enough COVID money to kind of get us through the end of next year, we might have some really tough decisions to do next year at this time, and we're going to monitor and ask the board to monitor things very closely from an ADM perspective, state school fund perspective, all the way throughout the year in order to keep their firm grasp on what that budget gap might be. But some of the things on that list, I'm not talking about the potential revenue dominoes falling the right way, but some of the things on the list are tough choices to make. You're talking about possible freezing of discretionary expenditures, possible staff reductions, whether it be for not replacing staff who are retiring, but maybe having to do actual staff reductions. And we've heard tonight from our administrative team how critical those staff positions are to continuing the work that's so important. You can't separate the two. You need the staff to improve the education, to draw the ADM, to continue to build back that drop that we experienced over the past few years. So these last 3 pages, to my mind, kind of highlight the fact that I think this budget committee meeting and the decisions made here and considered tonight really a tale of two budgets. It's a tale of what this body's comfortable doing for this next fiscal year and what groundwork, if any, or guidance or commentary into the record they want to provide to the board and to the administration with regard to the ESSER funding cliff that is inevitably going to be here. This is a more acute discussion of the version we had 1 year ago. 1 year ago, we had the same discussion. And it's just that the ESSER pot of money was much larger, and we knew we had some time to think about it and to plan for it. and to do the ADM increase efforts that the district is currently undertaking, and I think doing a great job at. But I think tonight, I think our commentary, and at least the comments I'd like to hear from a number of the committee before we make a decision tonight on what their feeling is in terms of, what message they want to send as a committee to the board and the administration, who have the ultimate decision-making power in this case. So those are my comments. And I invite anyone else to join in.
So there's some kind of math problem, I forget. There's a bridge, there's a train on the other side, and you're partway across the bridge. And the question is, do you run toward the train or do you run away from the train? And are you going to get off the bridge so that you don't get run over by the train? And you always hope for the best, but you have to plan for the worst. And a little bit, this budget looks like we're running for the train, which might be the right answer, because if ADM goes up enough, it solves the problem. But if ADM doesn't go up enough, it's going to leave us in a serious hole when the ESSER funds run out. So I always have a tough time being that optimistic about how things are going to turn out. And so usually in business, you would keep what we call our ending fund balance, which is just a cash pool to let operations continue without having to go borrow money or do something extraordinary. And the state is having some issues, and so it looks like we're going to get into some continuing resolution, and we don't even have enough money in our cash reserve to ride through to October, I think it is, which is a little disconcerting. In the past, we would have been able to handle that. So I'm going to need some time to probably ask some questions about the stuff that's presented, because I'm not completely clear as to what the budget after the ESSER funds are gone looks like. I think I'm hearing that just reducing 10 or 12 staff, which doesn't sound like something we can't handle, would solve that problem, but I'm not sure that's actually correct.
So I guess I'd like to ask anybody. I don't like to do business based on hope. I like numbers, but there's projects that I'm intimately familiar with that provide hope for those funds to come in. There's at least 2 or 3 different housing developments with people that can actively move from outside in to the area that are going to automatically be adding kids to the system that are waiting for different project levels. And I don't know how quickly all of that's going to happen because there's red tape to be clipped and cut, but there's hope on that side, right? There's hope that the government won't cut the ESSER funds, but I don't know, that sounds like it could be a possibility. So I hate thinking about the possibility of that being cut as opposed to
Well, the
being able
ESSER
to
funds end on September 30th, 2024, regardless. We will have spent them.
But they could be recalled if we don't use them, is what
Correct.
I understand. So I would hate to not use them, right? So
Right, we'll use them before they get them.
Yeah. If they're there, it seems like a good thing to try to get them. I think that, personally, the last thing that we need is to reduce staff, because I think that we need it. So what we can do to counteract that is based on hope. And again, I hate hope, but sometimes we have to hope a little bit.
So I look at hope as planning. And so we can do worst case scenario and best case scenario, and I prefer to land somewhere in the middle. On page 65, the information here, for instance, on the increasing ADM, those are pretty mid-road estimates based on what we're looking at for increased ADM this year. So for instance, on the list, we put in additional ADM for GP Flex at 75, and we're already up an additional 112. So that was, and it's in addition to this year's ADM as well as next year's ADM. Taking into account the new housing developments and projects that are happening, the one that's right next to South, for instance. How many houses are there? Are there 30 or?
Well, I don't think it's housing, it's low income.
It's multifamily, low income, and I think it's larger than that, if I'm not mistaken.
There's going to be, we've been told by the Housing Authority that we can expect between 83 and 100 students pretty quickly once they open. Now, when they will open will depend on when they can get power, but that will be, we're hoping still for this winter.
But are we taking, I'm sorry, are we taking into consideration that many of the families that are going to move into that low-income housing across from South are probably students that are already enrolled in our district? I mean, I don't see that bringing, I mean, we're already facing a housing crisis as it is. I mean, do you think that's really going to be 80 to 100 new students?
That's just what we were told.
Yeah, just.
I don't know if that's redistribution of students that are already existing, or once they move out of their current home into the new housing, of new students, new families will move into the houses they left behind. So.
Yeah, it's an increase in housing, which would be a net increase in people, generally speaking, which is what, that's what I do. Generally speaking, we get new people in as opposed to just a transfer.
I understand, but I think with our low-income housing and the level of houselessness we have in our community right now, and I mean, I work for child welfare, those are the numbers that we are seeing constantly moving. Those people are not coming from somewhere else into our community, they're relocating within it. So other than moving from one district to the other, I don't know that those numbers are going to be as high as we would want them to be bringing new students in.
Well, and that's just one of the developments too. There's multiple developments going on, but yeah.
So there is the development across the street from Redwood, that's 62 new houses. Those are single-family units. We know that there's another subdivision going in behind Albertsons. They're anticipating somewhere between 650 and 1,500 new houses going in there behind that.
That's going to be a little while though.
That's about 3 to 5 years, depending on, I don't know how soon they're going to finish the first group of houses.
It's phased, but it's going to be
right
spread out, and they still have a lot to do over there as far as permitting processes.
But I think the Redwood area will be much sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Our expenditures year over year, as I read this slide on, it says page 33, 34. Am I correct in reading that we are decreasing our expenditures by about $3.5 million this year or this next budget from this year? Is that correct? So we have, in essence, done some good work, right, in reducing our expenditures. So we're doing better than the federal government has ever done. And being able to take the money that we receive and then cut costs at some point. And so I do want to remind the Budget Committee that we are moving in a good direction. And as we look at the 24-25 budget, we're looking at a deficit of potentially $7 million, but we have cut $3.5 million, and cutting a lot more, making punitive cuts when we don't know exactly what the future holds, I think would be unwise. I think we do need to proceed with caution, and we need to make sure that we're always being fiscally prudent with what we do. But dramatic cuts in this year's budget in hopes that we don't have to make those next year probably wouldn't be where I would recommend we go. I think if we were to cut another $3.5 million out of the budget next year, that would probably put us where we're going to be closer to. But I have more than hope that we will see our ADM increase significantly. I think there has been a lot of headwinds that way. We are 1 year out from the pandemic, and I think things will continue to improve significantly. And with new housing, but also with life just getting back to normal, I think we'll continue to see that number grow. I am curious to know how many students we would need to see in the district in order to have our state school fund or our revenue coming in that would put us closer to 83 or $84 million. If we have 6,200 students enrolled or 6,500 students enrolled, what number do we need to look at in order to say this is going to put us where we need to be for the 24-25 year? Do we know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would imagine it'd be around 5,950 total student population would put us close to that. Okay. Remember, we added 112 interdistrict transfers, and we've done that in less than 3 weeks. So we believe that another 80, 85 is well within the realm of possibility. And that is in addition to the 200 we added this year. So, we're talking about adding a total of over 2 years of about 400 students, which really starts closing that gap. And we really have no idea what GP Flex is going to do. I think that by September of 2024, it will be 225 to 230 students. That is what I've told the principal it will be at. And so he will make that happen. So that would be
that. That's good.
Yes.
Say it, it's going to happen. Perfect. See, we don't have hope. We just know it's going to be okay.
What was your target number again you're hoping to see? And you wanted a number of ADM increase to get the state school fund from 68 million this year to?
Well, yeah. So if there's only one way that the district can generate revenue, if you will, if we look at it from a business perspective. If we take away what we hope the state will provide or what federal funds are coming our way or whatever, it's how many students do we have? And so what is that base number that we need to see in ADM in order to achieve our budget? So right now we have 6,615 students enrolled this year, and that translates into X amount of dollars from the state. Well, if we had 7,000 students, what would that budget, how much money would we have coming in? And that kind of helps us I think as a board and as a budget committee, understand where do we need to be with student enrollment that puts us in a position where we can say, okay, we are more comfortable with the budget that we have outside of those funds. So this number is important for us to look at and understand how are we doing. And one of the reasons why I think Tim is sitting here is because that's what he has done in other districts, and that's what we're hoping to see moving forward is programs and opportunities for students that will bring them to our district in order that we can be more comfortable with the budget and not worry so much about the windfalls or shortfalls that come our way from the state or other sources of funding. So anyway, that's what my question was really centered around.
100 students is about $1 million.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need, it's actually not, the math isn't terribly difficult. Gary mentioned there's no 24-25 budget here, but there are some projected budget numbers. If you do take a look at pages 63 and 64, the just really rough cut, look forward projected budget numbers based on the proposed budget for this next year with built-in state school fund revenue increases on the 49-51 split, certain amount of ADM increase, not the numbers we're talking about tonight, the loss of ESSER money. Roll-up costs are only 1.3-ish million according to this, but that assumes certain collective bargaining goals are accomplished. And to be honest, a very lean contingency. I mean, from an accountant's perspective, $600,000 on an $80 million budget is a very low contingency. But let's just let's just say that that works. You're looking at a 6.8 million, you said $7 million budget hole. I think there's a slide earlier, Nefeli, that you had the dollars per ADMW at about 10 grand. I mean, so just,
10,260.
yeah, so let's just call it $10,000 per kid. You need 700 net increase in ADM, and you won't have to worry about any of the reductions that she has on the what if page. And so that would be great. And, you know, take a look at those elements she has there, adding up the increased ADM numbers on that chart. And the nice thing about ADM increased numbers, they roll from year to year. So when you get that base back up, then that stays there. 400 is what I total up in all those categories the Phillies got mapped out there on page 65. And that's, so you're not at 700, but boy, that's a nice chunk toward getting back to normal. The only caveat to that is keep in mind, when you look at that state school fund revenue, it depends on what our ADMW plus 400 or plus 700 is as a percentage of the statewide ADMW, because that really drives what we're going to get in new revenue. If everybody else is growing, it may not reflect a full 10,000 per ADM per kid increase. So I agree, there are moving parts. I don't think we have to hit the panic button. Am I more concerned than I was a year ago? Yes, I am, because we're a year away. September 2024, I do believe we should spend it out well before that, so the feds get into another budget debacle. They don't come looking to grab our ESSER monies, but we're no more than a year away from having to either significantly grow ADMW or take a look at some of those painful choices. And there are some prudent steps you can do at the margin that aren't that painful, that you might say a year from now, gosh, I'm glad we saved that million. You know, we're $1 million better off than we would have otherwise been. And those are maybe some of the conversations we can leave even to the board to decide without the budget committee, but saying we would encourage you to exercise fiscal prudence before adoption to see if there are some discretionary expenditures. What can we do without upsetting the apple cart to at least say, you know what, we saw this coming and we're going to maximize the amount that we have and we're going to really go all for it on ADM growth next year. So those are just some thoughts.
I will tell you, we're not going to gain 700 students next year.
Well, wait a minute, you just said that GP Flex is going to have 250. Why don't you just say we're going to have 700 and then the problems are solved? Tim, I just said that to the principal we could do it, so there you go.
Keith, are you listening out there?
He left the building.
Yeah.
He had to go. Exit.
No pressure.
Can I ask how stable that 10.2 billion number is? Because it was 9.9, and then it's just Ways and Means recommendations at this point. It's not they approved.
It's not approved, but it has been approved by the,
Ways and Means.
yes, by the co-chairs and by the House. So it's really just the Senate coming back. And it is what the governor has asked them to do. Plus the 140 million in early literacy, plus the $1 million that we talked about in increased property tax. It really translates into about a 10.3, 10.4 state education budget, plus the additional almost $1 billion in the student investment account. So the state has done what they can to hold us financially, keep us financially solvent, but yeah.
Also just wanted to mention that we did take a poll across other districts and all the business managers are utilizing the $10.2 billion budget as their number. I shouldn't say all, most. I think there's one that's not.
Yeah.
Any other comments or thoughts in terms of the direction to take and the tack that the Budget Committee wants to take with regard to approving the proposed budget as presented tonight? Do we feel comfortable enough to approve it, subject to some cautionary comments for the board to take into account? If I understand budget law right, the board can adjust the general fund budget or even any other fund budget by up to 10% before adoption, is that right?
Yep.
So that's quite a bit of leeway if something were to break. I can't remember a year where the state school fund estimate was so much up in the air, so much flux, because there's usually numerous projected state school fund amounts going through the spring into this point. We've got one from February. That's why your state school fund number doesn't tie to the proposed budget document. But it is what it is, and so we're having our own version of of a budget deal being struck on the national level at our state level. And so what do people feel like? I mean, I think these 2 pages and the funding clip that it illustrates were there just to get that in black and white so folks knew what we might be looking at. And so there could be some real tough decisions coming up down the road. Hopefully there will not. And these housing developments will go up as fast as Keith's GP Flex goes up, and we'll be getting families and students into those classrooms. I sure hope so. Yeah, good.
I just want to share that a year ago, I know at this meeting, Sherry talked about the possibility of closing an elementary school.
She did.
We're really not there.
Yeah.
We're way more financially solvent than that. We've reduced our dependence on the ESSER funds for salary and payroll by $2.2 million with the work that we've done here. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I'm incredibly optimistic for the direction this school district's going. I think we're on a really great trajectory. I think our ADM is going to be in excess of 5,800 next fall. I won't be so bold as to say in excess of 5,900, but I'm really optimistic of where we're going and what's happening here. We have a great product. Our parents recognize it's a great product. We offer a lot of different educational opportunities for families. We have over 400 students signed up to wanting to be in our automotive program. We have other programs that people are demanding, and we're meeting those needs. People want to be here. We're going to be okay. That doesn't mean we're going to spend wildly next year. I promise you that. We will be fiscally prudent, but we're in much better shape, I believe, than we were a year ago. We've added students back, and we continue to add students back. And I understand why Sherry was saying that. You look at losing 800 students, you're like, yeah, we've got to do something drastic. They're coming back, and they're going to keep coming back. And we're going to grow this district. And within the next 10 years, we're going to add 1,000 students to this district just because of all the people moving into this area. It's a place people, yeah, you can write that down.
Can you get that in the minutes, please?
Yes. By the time I retire, we will have 7,000 students in the Grants Pass School District. And you'll be telling me you need to build another elementary school. So, and if I'm wrong, you're retired.
Can I ask?
I say this all sincerity. You can only fire me once. If I'm wrong, I won't be wrong. I promise you I won't be wrong.
I have a question on so the debt restructuring that we did, you guys voted on at the board meeting that gave us the $13 million to do capital projects. Is that only slated for capital projects? So should we be facing this crisis, we can't divert that money to do anything else?
This is money that has to be spent on projects that will last 25 years.
Okay.
So this is roofing, this is really capital projects, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not like HELOC loan when you go to the public, and it is a public offering, from what I understand it. They're going to go out to market, and it has those parameters associated with it. So the committee members have any other information they want to see, any other comments or questions? If not, we'll move on in the agenda to consider a motion as it stands now with a proposed budget. This has been so fluid, and I understand, and the Feli's worked extremely hard on this document. It's hard to keep all the numbers. It doesn't tick and tie as it might have had we gotten information, more solid information sooner. But it does lay out an appropriation level, which in my opinion allows the district to continue moving in the positive direction it has been. I think that suitable caveats have been made in terms of, the going forward, but there's been a lot of optimistic notes hit in terms of growing enrollment as well. So if no one wants any additional information, or are there any other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion. Yep.
The crisis that we've been in for the last 2 years, and really have been fiscally, responsible, and saved our teachers, and looked at how much value they are. And I know you've had to make cuts, and I know sacrifices have had to be made, but I I'm proud of this district that they have maintained the services that my children enjoyed and hopefully generations in the future will as well. Thank you.
Motion to move the vote.
The only comment I would make is let's make sure that the feds cannot claw back any of our money.
So that's a question.
I don't think they're going to let that happen.
We need a motion.
We will not let that happen. It's not that, we're watching it, the entire K-12 across
it
the
is.
nation are watching this very closely.
Something to watch.
Well, I still resent the state for the smoke and mirrors and the $2 million they said they'd give us back that we never got, so.
Gary?
So are we ready to sign this
So
budget?
just one more comment, and that is, I'd like to say I really appreciate the fact that the district has adopted the attitude to attract students. I think that gives the district the right kind of focus for the kids and the families to focus on their needs better. And I appreciate that Superintendent Sweeney and the staff is headed in that direction.
Very good. Well, I'd like to then propose a motion that we approve the proposed budget with several, just several comments to go along with that. Being that the Budget Committee encourages the board and the administration to do everything possible to ensure we preserve available ESSER funding, that we take a look at what may be available in terms of prudent expenditure limitations going into next year, and if they identify things that can be done to maximize the general fund, beginning fund balance, to encourage them to consider doing so before formal adoption. And then finally, that we encourage, and we're very grateful for this listing of what we can do to increase revenue, staying focused on the ball, which is what Gary's excited about, and then also these prudent steps that the board can follow during the year to make sure we really got a good solid finger on the pulse. What we don't want to have happen is a year from now, or say even next spring, all of a sudden we go, so during the year with close monitoring, I think we can see that train that Gary's talking about and maybe say, you know what, we don't have to jump off the bridge. So again, in a nutshell, I'm making a motion that we approve the proposed budget as presented with those caveats and comments. Here a second. Any other comments? Ready for the vote? Why don't we go ahead and take a roll call, if you don't mind, Tanya.
Budget Member Macy?
I didn't hear. I approve the budget with.
Member Brownell?
Yes.
Budget Member Bassett?
Yes.
Budget Member Long?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Member Wilkins?
Yes.
Budget Member Higgins?
Yes.
Budget Member Collins? Yes. Budget Member Ingram?
Yes.
Board Member Richardson?
What was
Yes.
Don't make me throw my pen.
With that, I think the proposed budget has been approved. Thank you all for your time and effort, and particularly thank Nefeli and everybody for such a great job. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
All right.
8:01.
Have your gavel.